Aurangabad Management Association welcomes you to 23rd Rare Share Session, the monthly program on inspirational success in management. We feel immense gratitude to have you as our audience and our speakers who have taken their time out of their busy schedule and accepted our invitation for Rare Share. Our welcome on the dais, our speaker for today, Mr. S.D. Tambolkar, Founder Chairman, Sanjeev Group, and Maithili Tambolkar, Managing Director, Sanjeev Group, Chairman AMA, Shri P. Tripathi ji, our guest of honor, Shri Umesh Dashrathi, Lucha Group of Industries, and Dr. Ullas Shiurkar, Dean, Management Institute, Devgiri. I would request Chairman AMA Shri P. Tripathi ji to present a floral welcome to our speaker, Mr. S.D. Tambolkar and Maithili Tambolkar. I request Shri Ashish Garde to welcome our guest of honor, Shri Umesh Dashrathi. I request Dr. Sunil Deshpande to welcome Dr. Ullas Shiurkar, Dean, Management Institute, Devgiri. Thank you.
Yes.
It is a great pleasure to have today S.D. Tambolkar and Maithili Tambolkar, Sanjeev Group, to be our speaker. I would request Dr. Sunil Deshpande to introduce our guest.
Dignitaries on the dais and my dear friends. Today is the 23rd Rare Share and we are marching towards the 25th. Few days ago, or rather a couple of months ago, we had invited a couple to share their success story here in form of millions and moving paper. They shared their success story as they started the business together and they have become global. Today we have another pair here in the form of Sanjeev Tambolkar and Maithili Tambolkar, who are working together, although in the succession plan, and they have become global. I am not going to tell everything about their life because it's for them to tell. We have invited them here to talk about their success story and their life. However, just a brief introduction. Sanjeev did his engineering from College of Engineering, Pune, B in Metallurgy, and post his engineering graduation, he worked for 6 years in 3 different large companies. 6 years in 3 different large companies. So he kept on changing his jobs from Bajaj Auto, Forbes Campbell and L&T. Although he was working in such large companies, his entrepreneurial spirit was not allowing him to be at peace with himself. And finally he quit the job and got into his own business, a very modest beginning in 1988 with manufacturing of gears, supplying to Bajaj Auto. And till 2004, the group was steadily but surely growing. In 2004, Maithili completed her engineering in production stream and joined the business, and parallelly she also joined SP Jain Institute of Management for her MBA in Family Management. When Maithili joined, she realized that that product was very good, the technical side of the business was excellent, very strong, very robust, and what she needed to do is to project and concentrate more on the commercial side of the business. And she got into the commercial side, like organization strengthening and organization development, laying down the systems and policies, creating the business plans, operating plans. And when I speak with her sometimes, I really am surprised that she is ready with the plan for the next 5 years of her business and where they will be after 5 years. After Maithili joined, the group has taken a leap. It was growing steadily, but it has taken a leap and it has become a global group with an acquisition in Spain, and currently they are out in the European countries for business. In spite of this success, I have seen the family very modest with a lot of humility. I have also noticed the father and the daughter had their share of understandings and misunderstandings, having arguments as well. And the poor lady of the house, Saudamini, had to several times intervene and sort out the misunderstandings. However, very, very professional people, very professional group. The group has won several awards and it is still growing. I would not like to go into a lot of details as they will be talking about it. However, a very apt introduction of the Tambolkar family has been written down, penned down and sent to me by their business coach, Mr. Harsh Jaju, who incidentally is also the core committee member of AMA. I'll quickly read that out and then invite Mr. Tambolkar to begin his presentation. Mr. Harsh Jaju writes, "It has been my misfortune to miss today's rare share, but I am glad that I have the opportunity to share my thoughts with you even without participating today. It is possible to find together a combination of simplicity and success. It is also possible to find together a combination of flexibility and stability. But rare are those who are found with exceptional simplicity and exceptional success. Rare are those who are found with exceptional flexibility, but yet deeply anchored. There is this paradoxical combination of humility on one hand and deep professional will on the other. I have seen this because of my strategic association with Sanjeev Group, the Tambolkars and their key leadership team. In my interactions and work with them, I have found a very progressive nature and ample openness, yet having a deeply anchored direction. They are open to being vulnerable and moving out of the comfort zone. In my understanding of their organization, not only I see them offering a great value proposition to their customers, but I observe deep commitment and action to create a fit, to create an internal system tailored to meet the value proposition consistently, and more importantly, the ability to be agile and adaptive. This intuitively simple yet difficult to execute formula is what makes them unique. If I were to define them in one sentence, I would say they are playing to win and playing not to lose. Their deep commitment is not only to raise their own bar as individuals, but also raising the bar for their human capital with gusto. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Tambolkar and Ms. Tambolkar.
This Dice of Rare Share is really very good for management students and practitioners as they have opportunity to learn success stories from various fields. I am thankful to Aurangabad Management Association for giving me opportunity to share my experiences. First, let me introduce myself. I am Sanjeev Tambolkar. I am a chairman of Sanjeev Group. I started this organization long back in 1988, and as an organization, we are ensuring that we are manufacturing we are focused on manufacturing components, mainly gears and assemblies, and we believe in being at par with the global standards of manufacturing. In our organization, we ensure that we use the best practices in the world, and we always benchmark what is the best manufacturing in the world. After graduating from College of Engineering, Pune in '78 as a mechanical engineering, I worked in various companies. I had an opportunity having a very unique experience with my various employers. In Bajaj, when we just passed out, I joined as a training metallurgist, and there one can we had absolutely everything in metallurgy. We had a very well sophisticated laboratory, a very good heat treatment shop, and having all these things at one place was almost like rare in the industry those days. And I had an opportunity and exposure to use all those very sophisticated equipments, which I think hardly anybody had. After that, I joined into Forbes Campbell, which was again a very different type of industry. It was a cutting tool industry, and there we are making various types of cutting tools. There I came across use of different types of tool skills and applications and procurement. Fortunately for me, and maybe unfortunately, in those days after the Janata government, there was suddenly a ban on all imports, and we used to import. We used to import 100% raw material from either England or Sweden, and suddenly we had to take a decision that within 6 months or 1 year stipulated time, you change over to do indigenization, and or otherwise you can't import. So I had a very big opportunity of doing this indigenization program as part of that indigenization program, and I had a very good experience dealing with various type of steel manufacturing, steel making, and of course applications. Then after that I joined Larsen & Toubro, and that was a decision when I don't know, looking back, I don't know why, but then I joined in Larsen & Toubro in the switchgear division. So everybody asked me, what are you going to do there? So I had no answer, but then I thought this is something different which I'm going to do. And when I joined there, I was working in a department which was doing which was called as process development department, and we are working on automation. I'm talking about in 1980. That time in our department we had manufactured 2 transfer lines, which was not even thought of even the manufacturing facilities overseas. I can tell you that the Larsen & Toubro as an engineering company, it was ahead of at least 25 years by any engineering company. And in our department, we had a department, I think Ratata was a part of the department, and we had like 40 top class engineers in the country. And these engineers, we were working on the complete automation of assemblies, welding, manufacturing processes, and everything. I was there basically recruited because they had a very big problem of contactor failures. This contactor used to fail not because of any other electrical or design issues. They are failing because the springs used to have premature failure. And they were working on this project of enhancing the life of spring. So when they were working on this, I was a coordinator for this entire project. And in Larsen & Toubro, they had a very professional way of working. That as a project coordinator, I used to have complete end-to-end responsibility. And This end-to-end means whether it is like manufacturing, raw material, manufacturing, and finishing and all operations up to the testing. So in 1982, I remember we had the presses for manufacturing this leaf spring with from German presses, which were of a stroke rate of 800 to 1200 per hour. So means we were making almost 200 strokes per minute. That was the type of presses we had purchased for this project. And then the technology of tooling, technology in raw material, you can understand that even if there is any small issue in raw material, even maybe a thickness variation or anything, the die they are all carbide dies. So getting the opportunity of working on such a high technology, fully automated projects gave me a very good engineering experience, and I was working with almost 40 top class engineers in the country on day-to-day interaction. So with this, I think around 2.5 to 3 years I was working in Larsen and Toubro, and this type of experience gave me encouragement that yes, now I should get into a business. And I think whosoever was working in our department today is in business in those days. Raita is there, I am there. Then we have a lot of people who are into business. So with this I decided that I should start my business, and we started a business. That time the typical model was like we doing a job working. That was a typical business model which probably most of us started with. Everybody came here. We had a small, maybe I had a machine shop. We had some small investment in small lathes. We used to get material from Vajato, and we used to do machining and supply it to them. So this was a very typical model. After the mid-90s, I think the situation started changing. The policy started changing with all the OEMs. They started procuring most of the parts. They wanted to procure the part with material. They wanted to have finished parts. And over a period, maybe in late 2000, now they are taking some assemblies. No, they don't want any component supply. They want a system supplies. So with this, it was necessary to identify ourselves as some. We need to develop a competence in some field. In machining, we used to do practically everything in machining. Whatever comes, we used to do it. So we had no choice, and we had no core competency. So we decided that we need to focus on some particular product and maybe go ahead in that product. We decided that we'll get ourselves focused into gears. Now why gears again? So gear manufacturing itself is a very high level technology. You will find that most of the OEMs even today, if you talk about Maruti, they have their own gear manufacturing plant, the Suzuki Powertrain train. Nobody uploads gears so easily. So that is an area where the manufacturing, you need to have very high level of manufacturing capability technically, as well as investment wise. It is also a very high level of capital investment. And we decided to get into this because we wanted to have a business where the entry barrier has to be very high for us also, and for so we have to think about the competition also in long term. That we need to have a entry barrier which is very high. So tomorrow somebody who has somebody should not come and compete with me. So that was the reason why we decided we get into the gears. So with this a small brief about us and our organization, I would like to talk about today's experience sharing. If you, what Steve Jobs says is, I am convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneur from the non-successful is pure perseverance. It is not that, if I start doing something and I don't pursue it, I am not going to be successful. What difference makes that? I need to pursue. I need to pursue everything. And I need to have a high level of patience. I need to for pursuing anything. If you don't have perseverance, you just can't succeed. And if you want to be successful, the only way is that you have to be successful. I don't think that there is a way. If I want to be successful, I have to be successful. I have no other choice. You can, everybody knows the story of Edison when he was developing this first lamp. He did so many experiments on making the filament, the type of metal, type of atmosphere, what should be in the bulb. And he had very different, very high level of failure. Maybe he failed a few hundred, few thousand times. And then what he said was that, yes, now I know maybe 1,000 ways of how it cannot work. And he keep on pursuing, and at the end of the day, today we got a invention of a bulb just because he has pursued his dream of making an electric light. So as an entrepreneur, one thing is that you have, there will be a lot of problems, there will be a lot of issues, and you have to ensure that you have to pursue your dream. You have to have a dream and you have to keep on pursuing till you are successful. I think this is the 23rd rare share. So you must have heard a lot of business talking about their own experiences of how they are successful. I would like to touch upon a different aspect of business, that is succession plan. So I would like to work. That is why we are, in fact, we are titling this beyond the starting point. We don't. I don't want to talk about startup. If you want, somebody wants to ask a question, I am ready to answer. But then I think you have heard a lot many people talking about the startup, and I don't think there is a big difference between starting issues, starting problems for anybody. I would like to touch upon the different next topic, that is a succession plan. So first, what were the learnings during this journey of as a first generation entrepreneur? One was you have to find motivation within. When you start business, right from starting your family, people say that yes, they want to, but actually they'll end up in discouraging you. Your parents will say, "ठीक है, if you fail, I am there. Don't bother." It's not encouragement. It's a discouragement, and you will find there are a lot of people who are around you who are actually discouraging you instead of encouraging. So from where you are going to get the motivation? You are going to get the motivation within. You have to find your own motivation within, and you have to keep yourself motivated to achieve your dream. Next is you have to follow your instinct. What is what do you think as when you are in business? What do you think first for anything is always right. If you come to many times you come to a threshold that you have to take a decision. If you don't take an instantaneous decision, you always land up in taking a wrong decision. So you do what your instinct tells you. If you do a lot of analysis and everything, and then you find that at the end the project is not viable. But you have to see whether the project is. You have to have that instinct. I'll just give an example. When we did this acquisition in Spain, when we went for our first couple of meetings, the owner was almost 74, 75 years old. He was very frustrated. He didn't know what to do. He had a good business. I don't say it was loss making, but then he had a lot of issues of day-to-day earning. He didn't know what to do. Then when we did the due diligence, even our advisors also said that there are so many negative things. They have only one customer. They are finding it difficult to run the business. And what is that you are going to do there? But I was very clear what value I am going to add there. And with that thing, we took a decision against maybe the entire, after that, I rather think that yes, this is something which is a very highly risky proposition to take part in this. There are so many 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 issues. But then I had an instinct that we will definitely able to turn around this business, because this is what are the issues with the business as I foresee, and this is what if we do, and I can tell you now we are completed 3 years there, and within 3 years we have done additional investment of almost 150% of our acquisition, and all this money is generated there. We have ensured that our break-even has come down by at least 30 to 40% there. So you have to have that business sense when you look at anything. You have to look it. You can't look it just by analytical means. You have to have that instinct and whether you can be successful with this or whether you cannot be successful. Next is the biggest risk is not taking risk. See, if you are in business, if you want to be successful, you have to take risk. I think it's natural. If you don't take risk, then you just can't succeed. So you have to, you just don't get into, if you want to do any project, you make a project report, you do a financial evaluation, and at the end you say that no, I don't want to do this project, it is not viable. But this, you need to look at any proposition from a business angle. I think Milind has taken that decision once upon a time, and everybody discouraged him for saying that yes, this project of body is not viable. And he took a decision because he had that business sense that yes, this is something which I can do. And he did that. And see, you have to look at everything from a business angle, not only a theoretical angle. If you want to work as a in a copybook fashion, then you just can't succeed. You need to take risk and do what you think is correct. Just don't bother, because somebody is doing doing gears, and I see that he is making a lot of money, so I should also do gears. That is something that doesn't happen. That doesn't work. If you start following somebody, you will be always follower. You will never be leader. If you want to be leader, you have to have your own thinking. You need to do what you think is right. You don't try to follow somebody. Then when you are into business and when you go at certain level, what you have to think is starting is of the succession plan. Why you are in business and what is next? You are not going to be there for permanently for doing business, so you have to look at a succession plan. And if you see that 70% of family businesses in India do not survive beyond first generation. So why? I think that there are two major reasons for not succeeding. First is that the first generation who is doing the business, he doesn't know why he is into business. He is in business because he just feels that because somebody is doing business and somebody is successful, I should go and do the business. So they land up into business, they come to there, and after coming there find that the grass is not green on the other side. You have a lot of efforts, you have to work 24 hours. Initially they think that if I am in business, I will go for 2 or 3 hours every day. I want to have a luxurious life. I want to take a holiday whenever I want. But that is not the reality. When you come into business, you have to really struggle. You have to work very hard. And then they don't discourage they don't encourage the next generation to come into business. They say that see, this business is not something good. You should not come into business. Please get good grades in college. Take admission in MS, go to US, and don't come back till you get a green card. So this is a very typical approach you find in a lot of people. Then the second reason is during your when you are doing business, you are doing you have a lot of tension. Every day you have a lot of issues. You have issue with customer, you have issue with your labor, you have issue with your financial institution, and every day when you come back home, if you start grumbling about your issues with your family, your children who are in a growing age, they always find that yes, my dad is having a lot of problems every day. So they grow up with the perception that doing this business is a problem, and I am not going to get into this business. So one has to be very clear that yes, you have tensions, but then don't carry tensions back to your home. When you go home, you have to be a family person. You can't take your business tension to your family. So these are the two main reasons which I think are mainly that the family business don't survive. There may be a lot of other reasons, but these are the two main reasons according to me, that the next generation doesn't want to get, either you don't enter in the next generation, or the next generation get discouraged because of your attitude. So when we are talking about handing over the baton, first, when you are handing over baton to the next generation, you need to clarify your expectations. What are my expectations when I am handing over the baton? You should articulate your expectations to the next generation. This is one very important. And when you articulate also, please understand the next generation also will have their own different thinking. That thinking will be different. Everybody always feels that I have done business for last 20 years, 25 years this way. So definitely, this is the only way you can do a business. You can't. There cannot be any other way. But when you find that the next generation comes, they come with, they have different exposure. They don't have similar for what you have. They have a very different exposure. They have very wide exposure. They have different ideas. They want to work with their ideas, and they have to. You have to give them that scope. So you definitely need to accept this difference between first generation and second generation, and give them ample time to work on their ideas. Please understand, there can be a better way of doing the same business than what you can do. You should accept this. And yes, I'm not saying that you can just accept and you just leave it. So this succession planning or handing over baton has to be a process. It cannot be overnight. And if you ask me that the idea, typically this process should be at least 10 years, if not more. But you should give that much time for allowing your succession. That succession did not be family. You can do it with the professionals. But that handing over baton from you to the next generation, or maybe to the profession, has to be a process by itself. And you need to give this sufficient time to change over. I think with this, I will hand over this baton to Maithili to share her side of the.
Now, a lot of my points have been used by my father, so I have to improvise. This definition of leader is something that I personally identify with, because I have the fortune to live with, to work with, and to be inspired by such a leader. I have definitely been very privileged, because not just because of the business opportunity that I got, but because of the positive environment that I grew up in, whether at home or after when I joined business. My father did, I'm going to say a lot of my father because he is truly inspiration for my today's presentation. And he did a very fantastic job of articulating his vision right from the beginning, and very casually and very simply he would tell me that if you want to do something, do it to the best of your abilities. And when you are doing something to best of your abilities, is better be best, period. I'm saying all these positive things, and you may have an impression that it has been a smooth sailing, but my mother is sitting here, and she will definitely counter me, because at least for first 1 year when I started working in my business, I would go home in tears alternate day, plot various ways of alternate careers, right from event management to full-time scuba diving instructor. But what kept me in this business, or what motivated me to stay, is that Baba always ensured that he did not give me any discount on account of lack of experience, lack of exposure, age, gender, family obligations, and so many different reasons. And that taught me that I cannot give excuses. if I am here and if I have this opportunity, if I have this positive environment, I cannot give excuses of not having the right experience or not having the right office or being living in Aurangabad after staying in Pune for 4 years. So I cannot give those excuses. In fact, very early on, he started with this his style of training me. After first year of college, when I come home for vacation, he took me to factory. He said that you have to go and work there for 15 days. First day I went there, I went on the shop floor. I was working on a CNC lathe, and I spent couple of hours. I did a lot of effort, and very proudly I came back and I said that I made 50 jobs. Correct. I've learned how to input the offset. And his question was, but that is not the production rate. And if you cannot manufacture in your own factory, how can you demand from the operators that they do their job correctly? And that just brought me to the ground reality. And he has done a lot of such shakedowns many times and brought me back down to ground whenever I thought that I'm doing something extraordinary. With this, thanks to my family, our eternal referee, I want to continue by telling you our story of what we have done together as a family business and what tools we have used in our journey. So typically when next generation comes to the business, it's not just a challenge for the family, but it's also a challenge for everybody, whether it is people within the organization or outside the organization. Particularly in our type of business, which is a very highly customer relationship based business. So everybody is evaluating you, customer is looking at you as a long-term strategic partner. They want to make sure that the handing over, the change in management is happening smoothly, not hampering their long-term relationships. The people working within the organization want to make sure that they are not affected by this changeover. They have a lot of apprehensions. At the same time, there is also from my side, when I started working in business, one of the biggest problems or one of the biggest challenges I faced was fear of loss. Because first generation is very daring. They say we have nothing to lose. We started with nothing and we have gotten here. If something happens, no problem. But when second generation comes to business, always there is fear of losing. Somebody had once told me that we know that your father has been here and definitely we expect much more from you. So that kind of fear of performance is always there, and there is no way getting around it. If you are fortunate to be born in a family which is doing a good job, good business, then you bear the consequences of these expectations. Second point, which was more real or more practical, was experience versus exposure. So definitely when you start at a very young age at top of the organization, you don't have the right experience. There are many people who are around you who have much more expertise, much more experience, and you have to learn to respect that experience and make sure that you are deriving out of their strengths instead of undermining strengths of people. At the same time, what you can do is to counter it with your exposure, because nobody has exposure like second generation business people, because they have born in a business family, they have understood the business in different phases right from the childhood. There is a lot of direct and indirect learning, and definitely a lot of exposure in terms of education, interactions with professionals, and so many things. So you can always counter experience by exposure a little bit, but it is necessary that you recognize the need of experienced people in the organization and respect that. And third is that a business leader or an entrepreneur always starts and always can get spectacular results But what is important when the organization goes through this changeover is to be able to sustain those spectacular results, to keep performing over and over and over again. So those are typical challenges when not just for people or second generation who gets into business, but as an organization, when this organization goes through a change of being a very centralized organization to a decentralized organization. What helped me during this journey is this quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, which says, "You must do the thing which you think you cannot do." And this has been my motto. If somebody tells me to do something, I keep a poker face and says, "Okay, I will do it." And 80% of the times it works, because when you commit to doing something, you find ways and means to doing it. 20% of the times you do fail, but I think in overall scheme of the things it is acceptable. Taking a clue from what Baba said about family businesses not being successful over period, at the same time we have to recognize the fact that most of the big businesses around the world today are also family managed, including Walmart or many global as well as Indian companies. And what makes it work is to have the right strategy in place, and also to have a backup to those strategies in terms of execution plans. What we did when we started working towards this growth journey is that we tried to articulate our strategies from time to time. I'm just going to take you through maybe 3 or 4 points which we think are critical success factors for us. One is that we need to see where our product is going. Any business is about selling a product to a customer. You need to understand who your customer is, what the customer's requirements are, and you need to anticipate how this requirement is going to move. In around till 2002, Sanjeev Auto was a typical small scale company serving only one customer, because it was based on the opportunity available. But if the organization has to sustain, you cannot just wait for opportunities to come your way. You have to sometimes say that, okay, this is the opportunity that I'm going to go behind and grab. So what we did is that we decided that we need to have more balanced customer portfolio, more balanced product portfolio. As he mentioned that we had already focused on gear manufacturing technology as the area where we wanted to specialize in. So we put this a very well thought out strategy for product and market. We decided that we want to be in this product line which goes to any motion control assembly. So we defined the space in which we want to exist. Defining space is very important because that also defines your expertise. And as the organization grows, you need to have your selling points. That selling point is your expertise. You need to build, generalization is not sustainable. So you need to build your specialization. And we built our specialization by defining the technology scope where we wanted to exist. And then we defined that with this technology, what are the markets that we can reach? What are the possible areas are available for us to grow our business? And by that we started making conscious efforts to de-risk our customer portfolio. We were working with an automobile company, and typically they have high volumes and very high requirements, need very dedicated resources. So we decided that if we want to balance our business portfolio, then we need to look at customers maybe who are not as demanding in volumes and investments, but maybe having a more stable growth. So we looked at various segments such as agriculture, off-road equipments, engineering equipments, and fortunately everything that moves needs a gearbox. So any machinery, any tractor, any off-road equipment, The applications are even home appliances. Applications are there are a lot of applications. So we decided that okay, we need to do this distribution of our portfolio. So in 2002 we were 100% dependent on one customer. In 2008, by 2008 we grew by almost 6 times, but owing to the market forces. But we also made sure that few new customers are making gateway into our portfolio. Then by 2011 we grew still more because the market was doing good and owing to a lot of external forces. But we also made sure that we put right effort on product development, on reaching new customers, on maintaining relationships with new customers, meeting their needs proactively, and we had a pretty not balanced but a big chunk of business which was not coming from one customer. However, to go beyond that was almost difficult because organic growth can only get you to a place. If you want to go beyond that and if you want to really achieve your target, you have to look at different ways of achieving your non-traditional ways of achieving your target. So around 2010, when we realized that this balanced portfolio is not going to happen just by adding customers in traditional way, we started looking for a non-traditional way of growing our business. And then we went through this entire process of assessing various companies, various possibilities for strategic tie-ups, joint ventures, acquisitions, and we found the right match in Brimo Industrial Group, which is based out of Granollers, which is near Barcelona, Spain. And we went from having 50 million US dollars to around 85 in one go. Top line is not as important as the distribution of our products. So this target which we had taken of distributing our products evenly through various market segments, not just in terms of application. So for example, today we have automobile, that is two-wheeler, three-wheeler, then commercial vehicles, agriculture, off-road equipments, and some other engineering applications. But at the same time, we have worked with customers who give us global reach. So our products today are consumed in Indian market, in European market, in US, Mexico, China. So what happens is that any up and down in one economy or one geography does not affect us to that extent. And this risk mitigation is very, very essential if we have to sustain an organization. What this risk mitigation does is that it gives you time to implement your investment strategies well, because it gives you that breathing time. You're not dependent on one customer. So today we are catering to these customers. Bajaj Auto, of course, is our biggest customer. However, we are also working with ZF, John Deere, Eaton, Mahindra, Kirloskar Oil Engine, TBK, Kubota. So there are a lot of customers. All these customers are globally renowned players. There is a lot of technical as well as learning on business processes when we attach ourselves with every new customer, which gives us a lot of exposure in terms of organizational initiatives. So there is a lot of learning. As I was saying before, that having this balanced portfolio or having this stable business orders gives us breathing time to make sure that we are able to execute our investment strategies irrespective of whether one customer is performing good consistently or not. And that has been one of our biggest differentiating points. That we have always had a very strong investment strategy in place. This strategy is always futuristic. It is for technology of tomorrow. So when it comes to decision making, and as he mentioned, when it comes to looking at figures and analyzing whether this investment will give you what return. So most of the times our investments don't match those return on investment criteria. but they are done for having right level of technology. What we have learned by working with a lot of global customers is that if we want to grow, we have to be competitive globally. And being competitive globally does not mean that just giving cheap products, but also means giving cheap or cost competitive products at a global quality benchmark. So you cannot compromise or cut corners on quality, or you can't cut corners on process because it is not sustainable in long term. And our investment strategy is based on this philosophy that we need to have a technology which helps us have sustainable costs. So even if cost of investment is high today, what we look at is operating cost. If my operating costs are getting staying stable over a period, then I can make sure that the cost, the quality commitments that I'm giving to my customer are sustainable. And this has been one of the critical success factor for us, is that making right investments. As he mentioned, we also implemented similar type of investment plan in a Spanish company, where we have got very encouraging results. When we did this Spanish company acquisition, a lot of people, the first perception, even what we had, was that okay, that means we would be probably learning something about new technology or new practices from European company. But it was actually other way around. And we have so many opportunities today in India. So many global players have offices in India, whether they are machine manufacturers or technology partners. They have their teams in India, they have their manufacturing locations in India, they have their offices in India, and there is a lot of opportunity available for all of us to acquaint ourselves with the right technology and technology of tomorrow. So I think that was a big eye opener for us, that there is a very traditional perception that Indian technology is maybe not so par with European or American technology. But if you look for right opportunities are available ample. So second was this investment strategy, for which we tied up with globally renowned machine manufacturers to make sure that we have updated latest generation machines. So one of the principles that we learned was that you don't have to be good at everything, but you have to know who's the best in everything, so you can utilize their strengths. So we have very strong relationships with machine manufacturers, technology providers over the globe. They sell us not only machines but also new concept in terms of fixturing, concepts or manufacturing concepts, which helps us add value to our customer from time to time. Second area where we are working in terms of investments is to focus on completely defect-free manufacturing. We have automation is a very hot topic these days, and my idea of automation was to replace a person by a robot. But when we looked at various implementations and designs of manufacturing cells in our factory, what we focused on is not just replacing a person with a robot, because that doesn't really add a lot of value, but to make sure that this automation is ensuring that we don't make any defective component. So the manufacturing cells that we have implemented with automation, they don't do any value addition on a defective component, and they don't produce any defect in the process. So that is the kind of technology that we have to look at if we want to have sustainable quality and thereby sustainable cost. Because always your cost is always defined by many these backdoor things which you never can put on paper, which is cost of poor quality, cost of inflation, cost of labor, which we tend to overstaff so many times. So those are the hidden areas which are not put on any cost sheet, which you have to look and which you have to plug by using technology. And This particular investment strategy has given us advantage in terms of staying ahead of our peer group and making sure that we are able to have long-term relationships with our customers. Third point which I would like to touch upon is organization for tomorrow. Entrepreneurs can achieve extraordinary goals, but it needs collective efforts of team to sustain the results. And knowing this and acknowledging this is, I think, one of the most critical factors for a company to be an organization. And what we thought about this is that if we want to grow and if we want to keep scaling, then we need to have experienced and dynamic team members, and they need to be able to do jobs better than us. And by this logic, we have inducted a lot of experienced team members in the organization. I am very happy to say today that our top leadership team is very motivated, very highly dynamic, and is capable of doing much more than individually what either of us can do. Which will be a important factor for us going in future. Also, one area that we have to look at is not just having executives, but also having more experience in the top management, or as in our company, what we have done is that we have inducted a lot of non-family members in the board of directors. What that does is that having professionals and industry experts as board members gives us a lot of lateral thinking in terms of finding solutions to typical problems. Lot of times when we are working with a problem day in and day out, we have our own perception about what, okay, this can be done or this cannot be done. But having some disruptive thinking at the top is very necessary for an organization to be agile always. So we have done a lot of these initiatives in terms of delegation, in terms of decentralizing of decision making, having the right backup or right people at different levels of organization. But just having right people is not enough, because there is this picture which I really like, which I'm going to show. So this is a picture of this organization which has this goal of getting there. And this person who is sitting in the leadership position, he thinks that he is driving this car. The person who is standing here, who is his executive, he is wondering, is this really what our current configuration looks like? Is this what we are driving? But he doesn't have this liberty or motivation or courage to speak out. And these guys who are down there, who are running the engine, are saying, transformation. It will ground to halt if we stop doing what we are doing. So how does this guy make sure that he is going ahead of the competition? Because what he needs to do is that to maybe establish a better communication channel in his own organization, get an understanding of what his organization really looks like. And this disconnect can be really fatal in a lot of organizations. So while we talk very often about delegation and having people, it is also important to recognize these pitfalls in delegation, to make sure that when there are multiple minds, they should be collaborated on a common cause or common vision. And that was the fourth area on which we have now started our journey, is to define and articulate. Define the culture. Define what are the desired behaviorals in this organization, what we value and what this organization stands for in terms of value. Vision, why the organization exists and why all these brilliant experts have come together, what do they want to achieve. A mission, which is a path to destination, because getting there somehow is not what we want to do. Getting there by doing the right things is what an organization stands for. and goals, stretched goals, because talent thrives in a challenging environment. A talented person does not want to be in a environment where he goes 9 to 5 and very happy, relaxed. Then one starts thinking empty mind, devil's workshop. So we have to make sure that all these people that have come together, are bound by this vision, are bound by these values, still have this challenging environment to thrive. So we have tried to do that in Sanjeev. We have tried to reinvent ourselves as a identity. My vision is that in few years, people should equate Sanjeev to quality, to technology, and a leadership position in motion control. We have defined our vision to be a global leader in providing end-to-end solution in motion control applications. We have defined that to do this, to get to be a global leader, we want to do this by being a preferred business partner for our for our customers, and not just by doing anything, but by leveraging a highly engaged team through technology and innovation. We have defined this path. We have defined our value system. We say that being a Sanjeev employee means that you have passion, you value innovation, you have transparency, you are ready to take stretched targets, you are ready to take any challenge, and you are honest. And I think this type of framework is very, very important to bind people together, to bind an organization together, because at the end of the day, it is important that as an organization we go ahead, not as individuals. These are the points that I wanted to touch upon, which have worked for us, and which may give you some learning or some experience in future. I would like to end this presentation by quoting this line: "Your life does not get better by chance; it gets better by change." Or, as I would like to say, that if you want change, change it. You are not a tree. So, thank you very much for